congratulations. This is a great moment for African-American women. Errin, you have written a lot of pieces, done a lot of coverage of this, even from a very objective position. Were you surprised that he picked Kamala?
Not at all, Mark. I mean, honestly, Senator Harris is somebody that's been at or near the top of this conversation for almost the entirety of this deep stakes process. And I think that it was because of some of the things that I think he saw as strengths in her as a potential campaigning and governing partner. She was certainly somebody who had been on the campaign trail with him, was a one-time rival, if you will. Somebody that a lot of observers say made him a stronger candidate, especially around issues of race. And then, you saw issues of race and gender kind of factoring into her campaign failing to gain traction. She was off the campaign trail even before voters really had a chance to weigh in on her, although certainly a lot of the voters that I spoke to during the primary said that it was a head versus heart decision for them because they were so focused on defeating President Donald Trump, which is their top priority, and has been for the entirety of the cycle. But, ultimately, race and gender did prove to be Kamala Harris's greatest assets in this deep stakes conversation. From the moment that Joe Biden said that he was going to pick a woman, and when it looked like there was not going to be a woman to be our presidential nominee this year, the call just has grown louder and louder for that woman to be a woman of color and, in fact, a Black woman. And so, even as the criteria has shifted in the election, 2020 was already the most consequential election of most of our times that many of us certainly will ever cover as political journalists. But whether we were talking about the candidate who could generate enthusiasm or the person who was going to be ready on day one to address a global public health and economic crisis with the coronavirus, or the person who was going to be ready on day one to really help Joe Biden, heal the country from systemic racism. Kamala Harris was somebody whose name again and again, people were telling me was checking a lot of those boxes, and the person whose name ultimately rose to the top for Joe Biden among a very crowded field of talented, capable, and qualified women.
Mayor Pratt, talk to us, if you would, about this as a historical moment. How historical is it, and what does it mean?
It is quite historic because while we all took pride in Barack Obama being president of the United States, this is the first time we will have an HBCU conceivably in the White House. And that matters, at least to my generation. It truly matters because, we are a community as reflected with the George Floyd events and the Black Lives Matter. Why do you have to say Black Lives Matter? Because in America, Black lives have not mattered. And there is such a nexus in terms of our struggle, in terms of what we've been able to achieve with some of these traditional Black institutions. Preeminent among them happen to be HBCUs. So from that vantage point in particular, this is truly historic.
And is there special meaning that she's an AKA too?
Well, I think the fact that she's just Greek, that she, completely immersed herself into the mainstream of the community at Howard University, I think that matters. I can't talk about her just being an AKA, though I'm an AKA, my sister's a Delta, so I'm not going to go there. But I think just the fact that she was thoroughly immersed in the culture of Howard University, in the culture of an HBCU, that matters. That matters a lot in terms of her sensibilities. So it's a great moment of pride, I can tell you.
Amen. Reecie, everyone is excited and overwhelmed. I'm curious though, why do you think that wasn't the case during the primary season? When she started, there was this level of excitement, and then it just went away. What happened?
Well, I think Errin put it very well in terms of it being a head versus a heart decision. We also have to talk about the systemic barriers that Senator Kamala Harris experienced throughout her campaign. Certainly not things that are unique to her. It's something that happens to all candidates of color. But we also have to acknowledge that there was an unprecedented onslaught of attacks against Senator Kamala Harris. I mean, I have statistics that show after the first debate, out of 200,000 attacks levied at all of the candidates on Twitter, Kamala Harris alone received 181,000 of 200,000 attacks. And her coverage was disproportionately negative. She had a Russian bot problem. I know people kind of made a mockery of that, even though the Mueller report did confirm that Russian disinformation campaign targeted people on the issue of race. Her, the way that she was targeted was particularly about her race and her identity, trying to say that she wasn't Black enough. You had the ADOS, pushback that sprung up out of nowhere against Senator Kamala Harris. And so there were a lot of institutional problems that plagued her campaign. She certainly got disproportionately negative coverage from outlets like Politico and New York Times, who wrote obituaries starting as early as July in her campaign, and it rose to a fever pitch. And so when you have the institutional barriers of raising money and challenges with that, you have the purity test of super PACs, which people threw out the window when it was convenient for them later on in the campaign. And then you have the social media smears and attacks on her, which started actually years before, started in 2017, which she confronted Senator Bernie Sanders on the Senate floor about some of the people that were aligned with him attacking her. It's a miracle, actually, that she held on as long as she did. But what she's done, which is very wise, is use the time since she dropped out of the race to build her national profile, to be on the forefront of issues like coronavirus, as well as, the criminal justice movement that we're seeing right now in the wake of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor. And so now what she's been able to do is to define herself on a national level in a way that she wasn't afforded when she was a candidate. Yeah. And the good news is that the more people see from her, the more that they like, because her favorabilities are up. And as polling went on in terms of the Veep stakes, she rose to the top, and as the person who generates the most enthusiasm across racial lines.
Errin, I signed the letter that Black men sent to Biden on Monday. And alluding to what Reecie was just talking about, there were some of my brethren, even those who signed the letter, that were impacted by the social media onslaught criticizing Kamala Harris's prosecutorial record, and that scrutiny and criticism was not always fair. It wasn't perfect, but I don't know if it was as bad as was presented on social media. So some of those same brothers actually signed the letter I signed Monday. I don't know where they were during the primary season, but the fact that they signed it and the fact that she's been chosen, Errin, at this point, is it fair, or is it reasonable, I should say, to presume that some of those attacks that infiltrated the community of Black voters will not be as effective now that she's on the ticket? Have we gotten past that, do you think, Errin?
Well, Mark, what I would say is that probably is still an open question. We're going to have to see, in the home stretch going into November. But I think that what we do know is that these are the kinds of attacks that Kamala Harris did have to confront as a presidential candidate in this primary cycle. And so to the extent that she has had time to reflect on those types of moments and take the lessons that she needs to take, and that maybe, makes her a stronger vice presidential nominee and campaigning partner to Joe Biden. She certainly, given the racial and gendered attacks that she did get during her campaign, I think that puts her in a position where she's already kind of been battle tested on those fronts, and possibly will have had time to prepare with a different kind of rebuttal here going into November.
Errin, what about policy? She's an electrifying candidate. What do you think her being on the ticket says about policy we can anticipate from this campaign?
Yeah.
Policy that we can anticipate from this White House?
Yeah, I think that is one of the things that Black women tell me that they are most excited about in terms of her as a potential governing partner to Joe Biden, because they believe that Kamala Harris is somebody that is going to bring her lived experience to the White House and use that to really inform the potential Biden-Harris administration on policy issues. I mean, in her time in the Senate, she if we remember, was elected in the same election that gave us President Donald Trump in 2016. In her first term, she has raised issues around maternal mortality, for example. She has raised issues around criminal justice, co-sponsored that lynching bill. In the pandemic, we have seen her arguing for marginalized communities on issues like unemployment benefits, eviction moratorium, asking for the racial data around coronavirus, right? And so I think that kind of gives you a window into what her governing priorities might be, or what some of the things that she may, want to flag for Joe Biden. And think about the fact, too, that when Joe Biden was Barack Obama's governing partner back in 2008, they came into office also facing a huge economic crisis. I mean, this to say nothing of the public health crisis that whoever the next president is going to have to contend with. And he had a lot to do with addressing the Great Recession. And I would not be surprised if that was one of the things that was on his mind as he considered who his governing partner was going to be. And so somebody like a Senator Harris may well be confronting those types of issues in her role as vice president, which I have written about as having really outsized importance than it traditionally has been in previous cycles or administrations.